Hello everyone, this is Faith at Faith and Books. How are you doing? I thought I would tell you everything that I've read since the beginning of July, right? It's July 16th today. So I thought I'd just do sort of a mid-month update. So my dog is wandering around. He's very naughty. He likes to counter surf and steal things. Last night he stole the ground beef off the counter before I had a chance to cook. Anyway, very naughty dog. And of course, we had the attempted assassination of Trump on live TV, which was quite harrowing. So it's kind of a discombobulating time. And I have to say, the last few days I have not been reading very well. I've been reading very slowly and I've been distracted again, kind of like my June slump. So I'm hoping that I can fight that. Anyway, to get to the matter at hand, let me go over what I've read since the beginning of July. So the first week or so was finishing up June. So for June on the Range, I managed to read 2 books. I read, what was it called? English Creek by Ivan Gogh in June. And then I finished up, I read this book actually. Maybe I finished it up. I can't remember when I started it. The Green Grass of Wyoming by Mary O'Hara. You might recall that I wanted to get the 3rd book in the trilogy. So the My Friend Flicka book, which Hollywood sort of turned into a girls thing about horses. But originally it was about a boy growing up on a ranch in Wyoming. And it was kind of a coming of age story for him. And that is a trilogy, My Friend Flicka, Thunderhead, and then the last book is The Green Grass of Wyoming. And I only read this once before. I have the first 2 books, and they're like 1946 edition. So I got this from Thrift Books. This is like a reprint from the 70s. But I loved it. It was really good. It's a very underrated trilogy that I think is more deserving. I think the writing is lovely and intelligent, and it's so sensitive. And this is a story of first love. And I love the character of the mother, Nell. It was a lovely, lovely ending to the trilogy, and I highly recommend the whole set. So I'm really glad that I finally reread this after all these years, and I actually own a copy now. So that was a very nice ending to June on the Range. Then I finished up another book that shouldn't have taken as long as it did. It's The Lost Island by, I think it's pronounced Eilish Dillon. And I was reading this out loud to my 8-year-old grandson. We started it, I think, in January. And, but things got rearranged and I wasn't taking him to school anymore. And so I wasn't getting up. I would always read this over breakfast. His mom was doing it. And so we just stopped reading it. And every once in a while we'd pick it up and read a few pages and that was it. So we finally finished it up a week or 2 ago. I highly recommend it. It's a lovely boys' adventure story set in the Irish islands with fishermen. And it's just a great, well-told boys' adventure story. So yeah, I recommend it. And then I wanted to read, and this was trying to get this in time for Historathon, didn't quite make it, but I read Asser's Life of King Alfred. And then there's another that didn't quite, his life of King Alfred ended in like 887. And Alfred didn't die until the year 900. So then I also read the follow-up that kind of takes you to the end of his life, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, 888 to 900. So I'm going to consider this my Historathon. I started it before the end of the 2nd quarter of Historathon. I didn't finish it quite. So I'm considering it. I said erroneously that I'd read this other book, Orphan of Empire, and that would have fit in with the 2nd quarter, but I was wrong. That's 3rd quarter. Orphan of Empire is about how the British started up this orphans home in the 1600s and 1700s. And it's about what was good about it and what was bad about it. It was okay. It wasn't the best written book, but it was interesting history. But that would have gone for this current Historathon quarter. So I switched them. I don't know. Can you count it if you read it in the wrong quarter? I don't know. Anyway, this was really interesting. I really liked the detail about how he managed his court. I thought that was a really interesting glimpse into Anglo-Saxon, Middle Ages life. So I found it very interesting reading. I'm glad I read it. I read it in preparation for reading Ballad of the White Horse later this year. I think I'm going to read that in November because I'm trying to do a different poet every month. And that's written by G.K. Chesterton. It's a long epic poem about the life of King Alfred. My son, though, told me that you don't really need to know the story of King. The epic poem tells you about him. But I thought that I wanted to know a little bit about him before I tackled a long poem. So I'm glad I read it. It was worthwhile. And then I read The Gambler by Dostoevsky. And so I think it was in March. I think it was in March. No, was it March or later? I can't remember now, but I did a buddy read of Notes from the Underground with Peg from the History Shelf and Christy Lewis of Dostoevsky in Space. And we enjoyed that. And we were going to read The Gambler in June, but none of us could make it. So we read it at the beginning of July. Was that when we read it? Oh my gosh, it's only July 16th. I can't remember. Anyway, I read it. I think Christy Lewis may be still reading it, and I don't know about Peg. I think she's overwhelmed, and maybe it just didn't work out for her. But I enjoyed the story. It was, it was quintessential Dostoevsky. Everything's very emotional and, kind of high-strung. But it's told from the point of view of this 25-year-old tutor who he's come to teach the children of the stepdaughter of his employer, who he calls the general. And they're at a German town called Rouletteburg, where they're gambling. And everybody's in debt, and everybody has really dysfunctional relationships with everybody else. And it all has to do with money. And he falls in love with the stepdaughter. And it's a very dysfunctional relationship. Everything's crazy. I didn't feel like this was as deep as, it wasn't as philosophical as maybe Notes from the Underground, which was just like absurdly on point with different aspects of how crazy we are in our thought. Notes from the Underground almost reminded me of like C.S. Lewis and Screw Tape Letters or something, just so good at pinpointing what's wrong with us. But The Gambler, I didn't feel like it had that sort of depth to it, but it was an interesting story. It kept my attention, and I wanted to know what happened to the characters. And even though I grew to dislike the main character as the story went along, but it has an ambiguous ending. So I'm glad I read it. I don't think it's my favorite Dostoevsky, though. So, all right. I hope next year to get to Crime and Punishment. That's a goal. I wanted to read it this year, but it's not going to happen. So I'm hoping next year, Crime and Punishment. Maybe somebody will do a buddy read with me of Crime and Punishment. That would be nice. And then I also read The Moving Finger by Agatha Christie. So I got the whole collection of this edition of Miss Marple from my husband for Christmas. And I thought that I had only read the first two. So I reread the first two, and I thought that this was going to be one that I hadn't read before. But I had, and in fact, I remembered it. But I will tell you, this is one of my favorite Agatha Christie's. I think it's so well written. The dialogue, the characters, the suspense, everything. I think it's just stellar. So I enjoyed rereading this. And I think that's why I remembered it more than maybe some of the others, because I do just find it so good. So yeah, The Moving Finger by Agatha Christie, I recommend. And then, of course, I did a video before about how I read about the Zero Waste Living book, which was a very slim book, and Decluttering at the Speed of Life by Dana K. White, which I really enjoyed that. So let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Let me talk about what I'm currently reading. I'm trying to work on Mary Oliver. Now, I have read some of her books, not books, poems, and I've seen them and they just struck me as beautiful. I'm having a hard time connecting with her though here. So I think I have to give her a little bit more effort. I've only picked this up a couple of times. So I'm going to try again this week. Like I've said, I just haven't, I'm a little bit in a slump, so I'm kind of forcing myself to read. And so I haven't really picked it up very much. I'm hoping to get more into her because I really thought I was just going to fall in love with her. But it hasn't happened. So maybe it will. Maybe it will. There's still time. I'm also at my theology book club that I have where we discuss things on Discord. We are reading Romans. So I'm just reading the Romans guide right now. I'm actually reading the passages out of this. And then I read, there are so many notes. Like, it's really, like, here I am. I only got so far. It's just a lot to take in. I finished chapter 10. I finished reading chapter 10. I have not finished reading the notes for chapter 10. But these are just really extensive notes. Look at that. Like, there's a little bit of scripture and then all the rest is notes. It's a lot to take in. So I am working through that, and I think I'm probably going to be done with Romans maybe by the middle of next week or towards the end of next week. But I think I'm going to be done and moving on to the next book there. I don't know about other people in the group, but that's what I want to do. I find if I'm too slow, I start to lose interest. It just feels like it's dragging on. So at some point, initially I'll enjoy a slow read, and then at some point I think, come on, let's get through this. So yeah, so that's how I'm feeling with Romans. I want to get through. Another book that is kind of dragging for me, even though every time I pick it up, I find it so interesting. It's the letters of Vincent van Gogh. He's so intelligent, he's so observant, he's so good at describing painting and the art of painting, and it's really fantastic. He is a very troubled person, and you can see his mental instability. I think, maybe I'm reading it into it, but he's just like at one point he takes up with this woman who's a prostitute who has a child and who's with child by somebody else, not Vincent van Gogh. And he takes her in and he talks about how he can't live without love because he's been rejected by his cousin that he had fallen in love with, and he was kind of stalking her, and everybody in the family said, you gotta stop this. And he's really good at rationalizing his irrational behavior. He's really intelligent and really good at convincing you, or convincing Theo, why what he's doing is right. And so he goes through this whole thing. There's this huge fight with his parents, and he takes this woman in, and he is not supporting himself. His brother Theo is supporting him, but he totally manipulates Theo into feeling bad, and now you have to support her and her 2 kids as well, and her mother. Yeah. So he does this passionate defense of why he's doing this and why he needs to and why the world's wrong to condemn this and all this stuff. He's really good at rationalizing. He's really good at arguing. And then just over a year later, he rationalizes why he has to kick her out, why he needs to go on doing it. He's not stable. He's super smart though. And of course he's amazingly talented. So I'm finding it really, really interesting, but for some reason, because we're reading it so slowly, it's starting to feel like it drags. So I really, by the end of this week, I want to finish the section I'm doing now, and it's the name of 3 Dutch places that I cannot even pronounce. And then hopefully by next week, I'll start the chapter Paris. I would like to finish this by the end of July or just a little bit into August, because I have such big plans for August. I kind of want to be done with any other requirements other than my theology book club. And so for the theology book club, we're also reading The Lord, but we're reading this nice and slowly in kind of a methodical way. We're just reading one part each month, so I only have 7 more chapters in this part, in the second part. And this is up and down for me. Sometimes I'll read a chapter and I'll find myself disagreeing with him or just finding his take on things odd. And sometimes they're illuminating. I think, wow, I never thought about it like that before. And other times it's like it doesn't strike a chord with me and it's just, I'm a little bit baffled. The last chapter though, chapter 5, I said this on the Discord, The Kindness of God. I really loved this chapter. I really thought that was very good. So yeah, so it's kind of hit or miss for me, but it's interesting. It's always interesting. So yeah, so I have 7 more chapters for this month and it's only July 16th. So I will be able to finish that part. And then I've started doing a buddy read with Christy Lewis of Dostoevsky in His Face. And we're reading 3 essays. She has a collection of essays by Wendell Berry, and I have this collection. And we found 3 that overlapped. So the first one that we're reading is Horse-Drawn Tools and the Doctrine of Labor Saving. I thought it was excellent. I really, really enjoyed what he was saying. Yeah, thought-provoking. So we're just doing that. We're doing that for Sustainability July. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing Christy's reaction to that essay and also reading the 2 other essays. And literally you can sit and read them in 45 minutes. So, and then for fun, I'm reading this really old book. I think it's We Shook the Family Tree by Hildegard Dolson. And this was a book that I happened to stumble across somewhere. It's copyright 1941. And I thought, oh yeah, I remember, I think my grandmother had this book. This is about the war, World War I ending. So it's just a very comical memoirs of this woman growing up in Western Pennsylvania. And I remembered my grandmother had it. I don't think I read it before. I'm not remembering it. That I read it before, but maybe I did. But I do remember that I think my grandmother had it in her apartment. I remember picking it up, maybe perusing it and looking at the pictures, the comical pictures. So this is for the reading challenge of what is it called? Read the 50 States or something that I'm kind of slowly participating in. So I read the Penderwicks, which was set in Massachusetts. I read One Man's Meat by E.B. White, that was set in Maine. I read English Creek for June on the Range, and that was set in Montana. And then I read The Green Grass of Wyoming, which is set in Wyoming, and this is set in Pennsylvania. So that will go towards that. And I actually have a little map. It's upstairs in my room where I'm coloring in each state as I read. So yeah, so I'm getting Pennsylvania down. But this is such a light comical read and I'm reading it really slowly. That's how I can tell that I'm in a slump, that I can't even pick up something light and entertaining. So I think because of the news, I've just been on screen too much. So I'm trying to ratchet it back and maybe read more. So, and then what else am I reading? Oh, for Summer of Sport. So I started to read Seabiscuit by Laura Hildenbrand or whatever. And I discovered that I just lost interest in, horse racing is interesting, but I don't want to read a whole book about it. So I've started with and I can't remember the author's name, but the biography of Babe Ruth. And I'm about 25% in and I'm finding it very interesting. So, I am enjoying that one. Yeah. And so we're going to go away next week to the beach. And I plan to bring with me the next Agatha Christie, which I really don't think I have read. A Murder is Announced. So I'm going to read that. I also really need to start on my Anthony Trollope because I was going to read 5 of my mother's Anthony Trollope's. And I've only read 1. And so I'm going to bring this one with me. I also really have been wanting to read this for years. It's just sat on my shelf. I always think this would be a good beach read. And I'm also bringing Secret Water by Arthur Ransom. I'm trying to read the whole Swallows in Amazon series. This is the next one, and I think it would also make a charming beach read. So, am I really gonna read 4 books in a week? I don't know. Not at the rate I'm going right now. But I do want to finish this up, and yeah, and Vincent van Gogh up this month. All right, so I've talked for 20 minutes, so I'm gonna stop now. I hope that you are doing well, and happy reading. Bye. All right, go ahead. Go ahead. There we go. Okay, so we have spent the whole week cleaning this guy's room. He has been an incredible helper, and we still have little pockets of things that we could clean up, but I'll just show you from entering the room. And we still have things put away, like the vacuum and that's the broom and that sort of thing. But he just helped vacuum. We cleaned it. Before you couldn't even get into this closet. Like there was stuff in front of the closet. We couldn't even put his suitcase away. But now he's got his shoes down there, and he's got things hanging up here. And we put the, what do you call it, sleeping bag up there and other things. So we need to clean off this whiteboard so you can use it. Oops.
I don't even
and then this also needs to be tidied up a little bit. It was tidier before, but then we've been cleaning through stuff. So, but this is much better than it was before. I mean, it was just heaped with stuff. So it's a little bit better there. His toys are definitely more organized. They were all over the place. These stuffed animals are kept in there with a few favorites up there, right? And we still have things that we went through this whole dresser, and we had, I think it was 2.5 bags, 2.5 or 3.5 trash bags full of clothes that we gave away, that we're going to give away. I think it's 2.5. So we did that. And he has so many clothes that we still need to go through. Those are all for his school, though. And he's got 2 drawers full of uniforms, and he needs Spirit Day wear and Spirit wear. Okay, and what else do you need? You need your winter uniform. He's going under the bed here. He likes to hide under the bed. And you need your spring and fall. Early fall uniform, and then he needs his gym uniform. I mean, it's kind of crazy how many things he needs. And then he grew like a weed, so we kept having to get more clothes for him. And so now there's just too many clothes. Like I think he has stuff still from kindergarten that we need to get rid of. So yeah, so this is his room. See, we decorated it for him. There's the map of the world, the map of the United States. And there's his laundry basket. Do you want to say anything, Dylan, before I sign off? You want to peek your head out? Oh, there you are.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.